Buddhism can be traced to the life of a single individual named Siddhartha Gautama, who lived about 2500 years ago. Raised as a prince, he decided to leave his home at the age of 29 to seek an answer to the problem of human suffering. Through insight and meditation, he gained supreme wisdom, and his teachings form the basis of the many practices we now call Buddhism. Buddhism thrived in India for over 1,000 years, but eventually declined and spread to other parts of Asia and beyond. At the heart of the Buddhist world is the site of Bodh Gaya. Pilgrims visit here from all over the world to pay their homage to the Buddha. This is where the Buddha achieved enlightenment, under the Bodhi tree, so the tree is very significant. The present tree is a descendant of the original. You can see devotees wrap pieces of cloth around it. And right next to the tree is the Mahabodhi temple and many smaller shrines and stupas. Worshippers walk around these sites as an act of devotion. When you see images of the Buddha touching the ground with his right hand, that is usually a reference to his moment of enlightenment which took place here at Bodh Gaya.
That is a reference to his struggle against Mara, the evil principle, you know. And Mara was tempting Prince Siddhartha before he became the Buddha, and he was putting all kinds of obstacles, and he challenged Prince Siddhartha and said, "Who is your witness that you are qualified to seek the absolute truth?" And instead of saying such and such a guru is my witness or such and such a sacred text is my witness, he touched the earth and said, "The whole earth is my witness that I have performed that I have acquired the necessary qualifications for seeking the way out of sorrow." And it is said that the earth shook thrice to confirm his claim.
Another important site associated with the life of the Buddha is Sarnath. Here, the Buddha preached his first sermon near the deer park, and the deer can still be seen roaming around. But the monasteries that were built here lie mostly in ruins. What did the Buddha preach? The nucleus of Buddha's teachings are contained in the Four Noble Truths. These truths are that life is full of suffering, that suffering is caused by desire, that desirelessness is the route to salvation, and that these causes can be eliminated by following the Eightfold Path, also known as the middle path.
The middle path between extreme indulgence and extreme asceticism, because he had joined a company of ascetics, starving and exposing yourself to extremes of cold and heat. And one day he fainted and he said, "This is nonsense. How can I perfect myself like this?"
Followers of the Buddha carried on his teachings by forming monastic communities. And some of these monastic activities took place around stupas and at cave shrines that can still be seen today.
The main focal point in early Buddhism for a monastic complex was the stupa. It's basically a hemispherical mound that represents the burial mound in which relics of the Buddha would have been buried.
So when the Buddha was cremated, there was a dispute about his relics until one of the elders he calmed them and said, well, our Buddha was a man of peace and we are fighting over his relics. So they distributed the relics, and stupas were erected at 8 places, and the relics were enshrined.
One of the most famous stupas is at Sanchi in central India. This stupa, as you can see, is just a simple unadorned dome, but the 4 gateways are very elaborately decorated. Worshippers would walk through these gateways and then walk around the stupa in a clockwise direction.
Very early Buddhist art, such as the gateways at Sanchi Stupa, for instance, which were created between 50 BCE and 50 CE, we don't see the Buddha represented.
Stupa became the symbol of the Buddha. So very often in Sanchi you find that elephants from the forest have come and they are paying homage to the stupa. Sometimes you see them paying homage to the tree, the Bodhi tree. Buddha is not shown anywhere in Sanchi.
The gateways here at Sanchi also contain narrative scenes, but the Buddha is never depicted in human form. His presence is indicated in this relief, for instance, by emblems of royalty like the umbrella above the horse, or by his footprints. In scenes of worship, the image of the wheel or of the stupa appear to stand for the Buddha himself. So his presence is indicated by these symbols. We see the fertility goddess, the Yakshi, on one of the railing pillars, and her particular position, and the position of her leg, indicates her kicking the tree into blossoming. Buddhism made use of these types of fertility deities because they had to appeal to popular taste. And so they absorbed many of these local fertility deities into their pantheon. And images such as this were considered highly auspicious, may have served to delineate the transition between sacred and secular space, as well as sanctify the site. A similar image in the Asian Art Museum galleries from a railing pillar probably served in much the same way. The traveler to Western India will most likely encounter a number of Buddhist cave shrines that are located in that region. And this is a practice that developed very early, where monastic groups would create these beautifully decorated caves for the location of their monasteries and their Buddhist shrines. This practice of using caves in this way is probably related to the ancient practice of ascetics in India, who would retreat to mountains and to caves to perform their austerities and their meditations.
Ajanta is in a wonderful setting. These are cliff-like faces that are arranged in a horseshoe shape.
For 3 months in India there is the monsoon. At that time you cannot travel. So they needed, so sometimes monasteries were there, donated by some of the affluent disciples of the Buddha. And for the same purpose, to remain during the rainy season in a protected place where their scholarly pursuits may go on. The cave was made through infinite labor. They cut into the mountainside and made a sanctuary. So now I think it is called rock-cut sanctuaries.
They have congregation halls and they have the individual cells where the monks would have lived. There are also the chaitya halls, which are the halls of worship, and they contain a replica of the stupa and are adorned with capitals along both sides and columns. Ajanta also contains some of the oldest paintings that survive in India. These caves that contain them are very dark, and you can only see these paintings with a flashlight. It's a fascinating place to study early Buddhist art in India.